So on the happy note of having launched your career in stand-up comedy in Madras, welcome back. So I'm going to open with something about Madras, something you once said to me in an interview. He said, I write about that marble bottle soda thing that used to happen in Madras. This man is suddenly broken and is sitting and crying, and Madras has given him a marble bottle soda. It's like an award. It's like now you've fallen. I was petrified of the marble bottle soda when I was growing up. One of my hopes from life was that may I never be offered this marble soda, because that means something really bad has happened to you. And all your characters across your 3 books in some way received that marble soda.
Well, that's I didn't think of it that way. Maybe yeah, that goli soda. I grew up in I grew up here. So what used to happen then was, I don't know if it still happens. Just standing on the lane and suddenly one guy falls, and nobody knows what has happened to him. But the first thing Madras knows it has to give is a goli soda. That guy will go to the shop and get the goli soda, and then the shopkeeper will start searching for who actually got the bottle, because he has not been paid. But the bottle has passed hands. Probably it does not reach the guy who's on the road also. So to me, it was actually terrifying as a boy, because that to me became the image of something bad has happened to you. That you got fits, or it was used to call fits. And then one guy will come with a lock, iron lock, and he shove it into this guy's hand. And another guy is getting the goli soda, and this guy is just, meanwhile, just frothing from his mouth. So yes, so there were these images that I grew up with, very simple images for a lot of people, but very terrifying for me. Like goli soda is when you know that you've fallen, and also footwear outside the door was also a very morbid thing, because that is a sign that someone has died of heart attack. When you come from school and then you see people outside your house, it's because that was also a recurring scene, that something bad has happened. So there are a lot of simple images which I associate with very dark things, actually. Though once there was one guy who was frothing from his mouth on the road, and there was this watchman who was a rationalist, who kept saying that this guy is just pretending, because that also used to happen. And then the guy was frothing from his mouth, got up and he slapped the security guard. And so that was also a lesson that if you want to be right, you also have to be careful, because you might get slapped by a man who's frothing in his mouth. I think that is what Indian politics is also now. Constantly as a journalist, you're being slapped by some guy who's frothing in his mouth.
Well, you've got this streak of luck going. First, when Serious Men came out, I think the Coen brothers brought out A Serious Man around the same time. And then The White Tiger came out and comparisons were drawn. And now, of course, is The Ministry of Utmost Happiness, which, I mean, honestly, your books coincided with rather dreadful.
I know, I wish it was compared with more interesting books.
Yeah. Well, but I remember once when we spoke about what the subject of your next book would be, and I said, you know, you're going to move on to Godmen, and you said Godmen bore you as a subject. But then we also spoke about how once you reach a critical mass of followers, you go from being person to God. And in a sense, that's what Miss Laila is about. Like, at what point you reach a critical mass of followers where you become a god and no one can say anything against you. And that works equally, I think, for the right wing and the liberals.
You mean the personalities in our place? Like,
yeah.
Okay, yeah. In Miss Laila Armed and Dangerous, there is a gentleman called Damodar Bai, who has 56-inch chest. And also waist, I think, but I'm just focusing on the chest. But the characters are all fictitious. Any resemblance to real life figures. So, in our country, maybe in other countries, but this is a country I know, there is a lot of rational analysis of people as they are growing. But after you reach a certain point, there is an immediate acceptance. And it happens with film stars, and it happens with politicians. And I feel that Damodar Bhai character is someone who has crossed that line, and after that, you become sacred. And you can't say anything about the people. It happened with Sachin Tendulkar also, and it happened with sports people. So I think we as a people, we are in search of a God. I think sometimes I feel that is okay sometimes. Yeah, but it's fascinating because we already have so many gods, but we still we are in search of gods. And there is a view that some of our gods are frauds, but they are not. I always feel that the con man is a very low level of fraud. As in, it's always the con man who will go to jail. But if you deep down you believe that you are God or you're something very special, I think that is the secret behind the greater con men, because they are actually not con men. To fool other people, you have to fool yourself first. And that is the trick that a lot of people don't realize. That if you don't believe in your own lie, nobody else is going to believe you.
Do you think journalists have started believing in their own lies now? The liberal left, as it were? Because I increasingly notice that we are all panicking about, oh my God, the media is being gagged. And the fact that we're able to see that the media is being gagged, I think it's a weird sort of, we feel that we are being activists, whereas we are just screaming that, oh, we can't speak.
Yeah. You know, these days, if you want to screw people, you have to do it in a very principled way. Earlier was a simpler time where you can just say things and say what's on your mind, and sometimes these are very... I'll tell you something which happened, in fact I included in my column, you're getting a preview. Day before yesterday in the Authors Lounge, Krishnamachari Srikanth, the cricket icon, walked in, and he was reacting to one of the topics, which is about secular nationalism. So he said, no, he showed his Punal, and he said, no, India is a Hindu country, and I'm a Hindu guy, I'm proud to be a Hindu. We just let Christians and Muslims live. So he had no idea who I was, and there was also a Muslim writer with me. So I was like, what? And then the Madras moment came. I can scientifically prove that way, because that's what I love about Chennai. You can say anything you want, and then say, I'll scientifically prove it. And then said, okay, what is the scientific proof? Then he said, no, at least scientifically you won't be able to disprove it. So that also I've heard all my life. First scientific proof. Then the scientific proof won't come. But what I like about Chennai is that whatever you say, there has to be, they'll bring in science. So that means they respect science. You can ignore everything else. I like the respect for science. But what I'm saying is, I was not offended by Srikanth at all, because I'm from here and I know that this is a view that I've heard, and I really don't think there was any malice in him. He was just saying what his place in the world, you know. So people who are not from Chennai, they were a bit upset, I think. But sorry, I was saying this because. What was your what was?
I don't remember. I was just thinking.
So we were talking about the liberal.
The liberal left, I think. Yeah, I was speaking about how we're sort of screaming that, oh, we can't speak.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel that we as people will always find ways to say what we want, and then there is a whole reaction against it. There is a fear that we are losing something that is important to us, and I feel that some of one part of the fear is slightly exaggerated. I was trying to tell you how the co-option happens. So this is these people who say these things are not the real dangerous people. The dangerous people in the society are people who are too sophisticated to reveal their dangerous thoughts. And they're not going to say very simple things up front. You never see them saying these things in plain sight. And I feel that they use morality to as a mask to carry on some very dangerous thoughts, and it seems to be evident for most of us in the right wing, or what is called the right wing, but it is very much there on the other side too. And they would use morality to transmit ideas which in the long run may be very dangerous.
I think what that brings me to with respect to Ms. Laila is that Akhila Iyer, I don't know how many of you have not read Ms. Laila?
Don't embarrass me. That's a question, is it? All the hands going up, you know.
No, most people are shy about lifting their hands, so I'm not embarrassing you. It's the other way.
Okay, I just presume some people raise both their hands just to make me feel bad.
So Akhila Iyer is this sort of comedian who makes YouTube videos where she interviews people who are seen as icons of the liberal left. So I think the people who actually get fucked over in a system like this are people whom the left can't support because they are poking fun at them, and the right can't support because they are also saying, like, you know, what you're doing is rubbish. So I mean, since you're a man, of course, people have been happy to bestow the misogynist tag on you, but then if you'd been a woman, you'd probably have been an Akhila Iyer too.
Yeah. I'll introduce the novel because some of you have not read the novel and others were kind enough not to raise your hands. So what happens in Miss Laila, Armed and Dangerous, is on the day when a Hindu nationalist party, fictitious completely, has won a spectacular election, a building in Bombay collapses. And in the debris of the building, there's a man who's stranded, and the soldiers are trying to rescue him, and they've built a tunnel through the debris to reach him and to try to keep him alive before they can rescue him in more substantial ways. Now the tunnel is so narrow that only a small athletic person can go in. And the firemen, of course, they're all very fat, and soldiers are too large, and they can't send a child in because they'd be screwed. So there is this young athletic girl who's at the venue. She's a doctor actually, and she is someone who can crawl through the tunnel, and she's the one who reaches the man, and she discovers that he is mumbling something, and it turns out that what he is saying is he's giving out the details of the real-time movement of a Muslim couple who is setting out to carry an act of terror. Now elsewhere, it appears that based on what this man, the information that this man in the debris is giving out, a young intelligence officer who is a poet, Malayali poet, is shadowing the terrorist couple. They are in their car and he's shadowing them in this car. So it's set across 8 hours. The chase is the novel. Now this girl who goes into the tunnel, Akhila Iyer, she turns out, as they figure out, she's a prankster also. So now, first of all, how reliable her information is, they don't know in the beginning. But I use pranks as a literary device because I feel pranks are very close to anthropology. In fact, I don't rate literature as anthropology as much as I rate pranks. Because when you prank someone, immediately, it's like if you really want to know what your wife thinks of you, actually, you wouldn't want to know what your wife thinks, but for some reason, if you want to take that risk, you just have to piss her off. And when people are angry, they speak the truth. So similarly in the prank, the immediate reaction of a person is almost anthropological to me. It says a lot about people. And what Akhila also tries to do is that she focuses chiefly on the good guys, the people who seem to stand for all the right things, like rural development activists and people against GMOs and people who seem to stand for the poor and people who are against inequality, but of course who have done expensive humanities courses abroad. So people like that, and of course male feminists, my favorite. and she tries to get them to react in a ways that would probably expose them.
And hunger strikers.
And hunger strikers too, yeah, actually, yeah. Goes to meet someone who's been fasting for a long time through a pipe in her nose, and Akila goes up with her own pipe in her nose, just to see how it feels. And when they try to take a pipe out, she says, "That's my breakfast."
So I'm going to move on to a little bit of non-fiction. I mean, here all the resemblances are intentional. You met some very charming ladies for lunch, I think, for a particular column of yours. And I'm going to read out this paragraph from the column in Mint. Even though they do not realize it, most people are drawn helplessly to either the left or the right. Among the women I have spoken to, who are drawn to the right and are sane, there is a strong sense of home and community, but they also have respect for liberal values because they are beneficiaries of those innovations that have diminished the power of men. Also, in a generalization, they have not been colonized by the power and beauty of Western arts. Most of them did begin their adult lives with no strong political views, but then two major factors appear to have tipped them: a crush on Modi and bitter personal experiences with some liberals.
You know, this column, which was not very popular, began because I was always curious about women in the right wing. That obviously means that I thought that naturally there are some values that the left stands for and exhibits also, which I thought was very favorable to women, and I thought that women would be naturally aligned to an idea which stands against people who are in power, and which stands against what is called patriarchy. It's a very ugly word. I try to avoid it, but it's very convenient. But then I knew some of them were friends who were hardcore right-wing women, and they had very clear views, and I wanted to interview them and present their views. Why are you right-wing? One of them refused to call Modi by his name, as in, she would only call him the Prime Minister. So I was very curious, like what did you used to call him before? It's like, you call him Mr. Chief Minister. What annoyed a lot of people later is that they can have these political views and they don't need Modi to have these political views. That's what I think. I grant them that it's a reasonable point, you know. But actually, the second part is what is most important. A lot of people who are in the right wing are also reacting to what is called the left wing. Not that they really subscribe to all the ideas of the right wing, but they are reacting to some extremely rude and obnoxious people who call themselves liberals, who have a public posturing, but in private they insult people in their own ways, and they are so self-righteous. But in their own private life, they don't. Like, for example, all those people who stand for freedom of expression, you piss them off. You know how much they believe in freedom of expression. And it is my belief that if many of them had the resources to send goons, they will send goons. It's just that fortunately they don't have the money to afford goons. What people don't realize is violence is expensive. That's why only big organizations can do it. So many of these people are not that they are actually they subscribe to all the views of the right wing. It's just that they've started hating some liberals that they know. I feel that liberalism it has great ideals, it has gigantic values, and it's a great invention, a great human intellectual invention, which is very simply that the idea that if you're strong, you have to take care of the weak. I think that is a fantastic idea. But within that, of course, there is a lot of corruption. And people react to these individuals and they try to subscribe to the opposite ideology. in fact, maybe there's a lesson in this for all of us, that we should not abandon great ideas just because the ambassadors of those ideas are despicable.
Which is precisely what Akhila does. Like, she sort of strips these ambassadors of the ideas of all their pretensions and exposes them for the idiots they are, or for the sort of, I mean, they kind of believe in their own mythology, which is essentially their undoing. And she exposes all of these, and that's when she confuses the right wing also, because this Professor Ved, who is a sort of patriarch of the right wing, not based on anyone that I could make out seriously, but
so there is a guy.
But well, so he sort of realizes in the end that she agrees with a lot of their ideas about the stupidity of this, let's say, this agricultural scientist who's aspiring for a Nobel Prize, or the male feminist, or the starving person who is, you know, being force-fed, or whatever it is. But then she also does not subscribe to a lot of ideals of theirs, and she gets beaten up, and at that time she's not angry or hurt. What she thinks of is her own stupidity. So very often you can be liberal, subscribe to these ideas, but because you don't agree with one group or the other, you're left alone, in a sense, and that must happen to you fairly often.
Yeah, it's kind of very enjoyable to be isolated, I think, because these days what has happened is now that people are very sure about the religion, very sure about the caste. And as, in fact, I never thought I'll ever quote P. Sainath, but I saw this quote and it was very, he says that if you don't know your caste, you're probably upper caste. Which is a good insight, because it struck me actually, I don't know my caste and I thought I was very proud about that. But then when I read this quote, I felt exposed. So you all are very sure about, you know, and then we search for a deeper identity to belong. And now people are quickly, these days you can't, in fact I feel that one part of literature and journalism has become completely useless, where it can't change people anymore. The thoughts and ideas are already set, and there are very deep personal reasons why people have these beliefs. And I feel that what now journalism and literature is doing is to just help people conform their own views. Now I'm beginning to feel that if you remember this old concept, I don't know if anybody even remembers it, it's called objectivity. It's called balance. You know, the journalistic balance is kind of some kind of a fraud. It's like, you know, having said that, you know, when people use having said that, you know that some bullshit is going to come. It's like how when people use hunter-gatherer, if you hear hunter-gatherer, I know that some bullshit is going to come. Similarly, having said that means the person has already said what matters. Like in Game of Thrones, there was this quote, anything that follows but is horseshit. So that kind of, I'm not talking about that kind of balance, but to see an issue and to see something else apart from the politics of it. Because politics emerges from something else. Writers should be able to see where it's emerging from, instead of just how people are expressing it. But now I feel that objectivity is probably, or it's a disorder, and only some people are capable of objectivity because they have that disorder. And that's why they get into trouble in marriages also, because in a marriage you're not supposed to be objective. When the spouse is saying something which is completely wrong about a situation, you're supposed to be on the side of the spouse. But the objective idiot will try to argue rationally on why the spouse is wrong, which completely ruins the lunch. But objectivity otherwise in literature and journalism, I feel now that I've started looking at talent as a mental condition. Probably I call it a disorder because most of the time it's a disorder. It seems to be useful when you're doing something specific. Like a good mathematician, his genius is not a disorder when he's doing maths. But when that guy is ordering his breakfast, it's a complete mess. So similarly, I feel that and young people who have this disorder of objectivity, they should not be disillusioned. Of course you're screwed, but that's okay, you're screwed for a good cause. You're being objective. You will be isolated, you will not have many friends, you will be, you probably won't be rich, because success, I realized, you know, when I was young in Madras, I used to think I have to just write, they will discover me and they will celebrate me. They put me on the shoulder and that's all I had to do. That's not true. Success is a reward given by friends. And that's all there is to success. Any way you look at it, you know, all those grand people who claim that they were not conformists, no, when you try to probe their lives, you know that they belonged somewhere. But I'm encouraging young people to fail. It is not so bad, you know, as long as you're failing for a good reason.
That just reminded me of so many questions I wanted to ask. I'm not sure which one to go with, but I'll go with the Manu failure, the star of all three of your novels in some sense. So I find that you write about women whom a lot of men like, right? I mean, they're all pretty, they're bright, and you're just bright enough and just pretty enough for one not to overwhelm the other. But there's this one character whom, in Illicit especially, you refer to him as a sort of tribute to a generation of men that is dying. Because the next generation is men who live in the age of women, right? Who become men in the age of women. So the fathers who didn't know which of their children were in which class, and you know, who didn't know much about, who didn't know their servants' names, for instance. So that breed is dying out, and your characters are a sort of tribute to that, the men whom a lot of women will want to avoid. So could you speak about your interest in...
Yeah, that's very interesting. This is in my second novel, Illicit Happiness, which is also actually, it's good that you noticed. Of course, it's a mystery novel and all that, but it's also a tribute to a particular kind of a man in Chennai, a particular kind of Malayali in Chennai, who was becoming extinct for very good reasons, but that's different. He was an alcoholic and he could get his way, and basically like any man of his generation who could get away with many things. But then the new generation was going to be different, because that will be the kind of a guy who will first of all know the ages of his children, who will know the name of the maid, who will open the door for the maid and even talk to the maid, who will know where the kitchen is. And you know, especially like the men who take food from a larger bowl and transfer it to a smaller bowl and put it in the fridge. That is a sign of evolution for men. If a man can do it, then I think he is. But also I feel that the alpha men who were this alpha, they died not only because women grew powerful, that too, but also because sons did not want to be like their fathers. When sons don't want to be like their fathers, I think that is when society changes too. That's among the most underrated reasons why a society changes.
There's this one line in Miss Laila which says, "The most powerful men in my country wear divided skirts." And the first time you come across that, you know, these baggy shorts which are practically divided skirts, it's hilarious, because we are talking specifically about khaki divided skirts.
I don't mention khaki in my book.
It's on the cover. So this is how you don't mention khaki, but you show it. It's showing, not telling. But well, so in this sentence, on the face of it is hilarious, but then it's also very frightening when you think of the kind of power comical people have, because practically every character in the book is comical in some, but also very sinister. And in that way, I guess it sort of made me think of J.M. Coetzee, because his writing is not humorous. There's nothing funny about it, but the humor is in, I think ruthlessness was the word you once used when you were talking about him. The ruthlessness of the situation is where the humor is.
You know, yeah, I feel that it's like the guy who walks into the room and says, "I'm going to tell you a joke." Usually he doesn't tell the joke, because you've already committed to a joke, and is a very bad idea to first tell people that you're going to be funny, maybe. But I feel that, anyway, most of the time, I'm actually not being funny. Sometimes I'm offended because I thought I'm making a serious point and it seems to be fun. But I can also understand because most of the time, what we find funny, we find it funny because it's accurate. So now you have to put it on speaker and we'll listen to the whole conversation. No problems. Like even moments, what I like to capture in a story are the moments, and sometimes people find the moment. Like when Srikanth was saying, it's a Hindu country, he was searching for his poonal, right? And he didn't find it. And all my life in Chennai, when the guy was like, when we do cryptic CrossFit thing, who gets it first? And Anand will get it, or Sriram will get it. And he would want it, and they never find it the first time. I've always been amazed at why can't you find the poonal the first time? Maybe you should start improvising it, have some kind of a heavy metal thing or something, So, to me, when I make that observation, I'm not being funny. I'm just saying it really happened. Like for 1 second, he was searching for it. But when you see it in print, it might be funny. But I'm only saying exactly what I saw. I will not even say he was searching for his poonal for 2 seconds. It was 1 second. And I will not lie. I will say it's 1 second. So I try to get these things, because if you want to make up stuff, then you can make up anything. And actually, if you make up stuff, it's not so funny. There's something strangely organic about humor. And a lot of writers try to be very funny, and probably sometimes they succeed. But I feel you have to just look at the world around you and just report it. And most of the time, it is quite funny. The way people are, the way people stand. And it's all, if you keep staring at me, I always feel, keep staring at a person, it's something very funny. I think it's the nose, people's nose. I think it's the most, we got used to the human face. But I think the nose is a totally hilarious thing. What is the point in combing your hair like that when you have a nose? I mean, it's so ugly. It's like something just jetting out, and I can keep looking at a person's nose and laugh. There's something funny about reality around us that you don't have to really search for a joke. So the challenge for me, from a literary point of view, is just to capture that. Like even when couples, I find couples hilarious. They almost, just listen to suddenly start whispering. And they be talking crap. It's like something about, should we buy a plastic bowl or a steel bowl? They whisper. They always whisper. Why do you need to whisper? Because they're like co-conspirators. Any married couple, they're like co-conspirators. And when I was in Chennai with all this side, the women would always look in with one eye into their blouse. I never understood, why are you looking into your blouse with like one eye? It's like, are you there? Kind of a thing. But it is just a look, it's just a moment, and you just have to mention it because everybody else has also made the same observation. So what I'm trying to say actually is that reality is funny, but maybe there is a deeper lesson for us. Maybe it is all pointless, and that's why we find it funny. That there is no reason all these things should exist. So maybe we need not be so serious about things.
All that's been leading up to a paragraph that I want to read out. There are faces only an Indian can make, like that baffled face when he is shocked by the most logical outcome of his actions. He crosses the road like a cow and he is startled by a truck. A vehicle on the road? How? He walks across the railway track and he finds a train hurtling towards him. A train on a railway track? He is stunned. Cops who don't... I can't stop laughing. I don't know how I'm going to read this. Cops who don't wear bulletproof vests break into a house to fight militants and they are shot in their punches.
Such a sadist, you find it?
I'm your target audience. They stagger out looking bewildered. That baffled face when boys fall off trains because they were dangling from the doorways. When illegal homes built on infirm soil collapse, when pilgrims are squashed in annual stampedes inside narrow temples. In my defense, you quoted scientists saying that laughter is not necessarily because something is funny. It's a form of self-defense or aggression.
It actually evolved from a ferocious face that monkeys could make when they are kind of, and that evolved into a smile. I believe that theory. But yeah, like we have national bird, national animal, or national capital and all that. I think we have a national face, I believe. And only Indians can make it. Maybe Indians are called, Pakistanis also, they are in the same category, which is surprise. And I find Indian surprise very fascinating. Like, yeah, this, as the paragraph mentioned, this started when I would watch, like this guy would be riding his bike like a moron, right? Like, and then they crash, and it falls. All that is logical. But then, he's surprised. He's stunned. And I'm thinking, what did you expect? You know, and then, and then of course in Barakan, Gurgaon, you can also drive on the right side of the road. You can also drive on the left, but you also drive on the left. And then there's a crash, and then the guys like come out, and both of them are bewildered. I've seen this national surprise in everything that we do. Just like, we had no money with Nehru's time, and we believed in distribution of wealth. We went for socialism or communism. Nobody knew what they were talking about. And then we completely screwed, and everybody looks surprised. You go to war with China without any preparation, and we lose, and we're like completely bewildered, completely shocked. So yeah, so I feel that there is this face that we make in almost everything that we do. Like you start believing Saurav Ganguly is an all-rounder, and then you lose the match, and you kind of. Saurav Ganguly also used to capture that element of surprise. He would come fast, and like Boycott one made an observation about Ganguly's pace. He is so fast, so slow, that if his ball hits your crotch, it will be pleasurable. And then some guy will just hit Ganguly out, and Ganguly looks so surprised. But what I'm trying to say is, we see it in everything we do, in our politics, in our liberal friends, who think that doing some third-rate stories is some example of great journalism. Some of the recent stories that have been, they are just very mediocre journalism. And then when people stop reading journalism, I'm telling you, they're all going to look very surprised. Even in literature, literary events also, writers talk so much about, you won't believe it, dear readers, there are serious discussions among novelists on whether they should be interesting, whether the book should be interesting. Is story important in a fiction? Story, even early men believed in a story because a story, yes sir, story is very important. No, it's like something else. Then their books sell 500 copies. Then they will sit in a circle. They're surprised.
I'm trying to ask this question without giving too much away, but the story in this particular book is a very complex one. I think earlier when I interviewed you, you said, I don't know why I seem to always want to gather two stories and make them into one. Maybe it's a psychiatric condition. This was for illicit. But this particular narrative structure is one which must have taken a lot of work, and I think it's going to take more work to answer that question without giving away what happens in the book. So we can skip this if you'd like, as V.S. Naipaul often says. Let's skip that question.
I have to be very rude, yeah. So let's skip that question. No, I don't mind answering it. A novel begins for various reasons. It's not like the story comes to your mind. It's not like you're a prophet, but secular prophet. I'm not talking about any particular religion's prophet. I just don't want to get into trouble. Where you sit and you get a vision, or you sleep and you get a vision, and everything is sorted out, and you just feel that this is what you have to do. These are your gods, and you kill those people. No. You get sometimes like serious men began with an anger. Like how it is. Anger seems to be a stupid thing, but how it is when an intelligent person is angry, what happens? And illicit was about how ideology is a psychiatric condition, that everything that we believe in has come from very powerful psychiatric states which have influenced us. And when you're not mad and you're trying to imitate a mad person, what happens when we are all imitating mad people when we say we believe in this or we believe in that? So many things come together. First of all, for this it was the question, why do good people always lose? You know, this whole battle between evil and good today, what is the meaning of Donald Trump? The meaning of Donald Trump, the evolutionary reason why Donald Trump exists. Apart from the fact, I think it should be similar, there's something very similar to why Rakhi Sawant exists, but there is also a larger point, is that the good need not win. If the good is not able to tell stories as well as him, the good will lose. And the question was like, why are good such duds in our age? These people who stand for what they think is good, why do they lose? But that is just a sentiment. Then it's completely unrelated. I like to use other words. But happiness is a very superficial emotion sometimes when we are talking about what family says, especially family. I don't think family makes you happy all the time. You know, I think their job is to make you write novels, I think. But then there's a deep love. There is something which I like to capture where I feel that, yeah, the thing is, in every other aspect, I want to be logical, rational, I want to analyze. But I enjoy writing love because their high art is not being rational. It is to celebrate weakness. I'm incapable of celebrating weakness in many other facets of the society. In fact, one of the problems with us politically and socially is that we are venerating weakness, and we are making people forget that you're supposed to face life with a lot of strength. But there are some aspects of human life where we need to only focus on weakness, and we are all frail. In love, we are all frail. And to me, it's like a release, from a literary intellectual release, to write about frailty.
And another thing which you spoke about, and which you kind of touched on here, is you speak about family, and all the children in your novels, they have very complex emotions, but then there is a struggle to articulate them. And you spoke once about how you would like to write a children's novel at some point. And as you sort of, this was I think when Serious Men came out, so all these years into your career, do you think it might be easier to write a novel?
No, I've lost my confidence to write a children's novel ever, because now that I have a child, and she opens my books and she says it's so boring. And she gets her friends also, who are all very good readers, they're all 9. They all in front of me with no concern. They open the page and they read, it's so boring. They take the second book and they say it's so boring. The third book, they spotted some nudity which I didn't notice anyway. So I also feel that maybe that is not where my talent lies, but I also feel that children are capable of a lot of darkness. In fact, the success of the Harry Potter series is that she was not condescending. She knew that children can take a lot of darkness and death, and they won't be able to articulate it, but they will be able to absorb it.
Before we open the floor to questions, I think I'm going to actually, maybe you should give them the anecdote about how brilliant you are at networking and your encounter with Juno Diaz at the Edinburgh Festival.
Yeah, I feel that anyway. I think networking is the price you pay for failure. You know, and it's a very strange world where networking is called networking also. So I thought that I should really. I didn't have any social skills until recently. Or maybe I think I have some social skills now, but interpersonal relationship, I thought I should improve, I should speak to other writers, and so she's talking about, there was a very famous American writer who was in the toilet, and I didn't know it was him right next to me, and I had a whole conversation with him not knowing who he was. So basically that's what it is.
That's not what it is. I'm going to read that out. something hilarious happened that will tell you how bad I am at networking. This was in an interview I did with him earlier. I was in Edinburgh and I was in the loo and telling myself there are so many important writers here and my book is coming out and I should network. I should do myself a favor. And there's this guy who's standing next to me who was in the same conference and he was talking about something a speaker said. Now when guys talk to me in the loo, I don't meet their eyes, I'm just looking straight ahead. So I asked him, what do you do? And he says, I teach at MIT, creative writing. I said, fine. And I realized later it was Juno Diaz. And then I realized I had no hope.
In fact, I thought when he said he's teaching creative writing at MIT, I thought, what a loser. Because of all the things you can teach at MIT, you're teaching creative writing.
But I mean, the difference between your career at the time of illicit and now is that you are an unemployed graduate as of now. Has it improved your networking skills any?
If it has improved my network, yeah, I've become much better. But personally, I'm gaining a lot of friends. But when they read my column, I lose most of them. But I think it's a kind of a seesaw. I think I can take it.
Okay, so if you guys are willing to sacrifice about 5 minutes of your lunch, maybe we can take 3 questions. I'll just take all the questions first, and then Manu can answer them together. Any questions? No one knows what to ask you. They're scared that they'll find themselves in your column.
It is always the first 30 seconds, there is always a silence.
There you go, yeah.
The illicit happiness of other people had dark humor in the title itself.
Could you hold on? No, that's fine. You can go ahead and then.
So today you have we have armed with what before you came here? You are armed with anything when you entered the hall?
Yeah, I live in Gurgaon, but I don't carry guns.
He's a Madrasi in Gurgaon. You'll have to give credit for that. Yes, please, yeah. Next question.
Yeah, the illicit happiness of other people had dark humor in the title itself. While this book, I mean, this looks like a plain title for Manu Jospeh.
Actually, the title is hard to come by. You have to get very lucky. In fact, illicit also just came by when I was writing. It was called something else. So I suppose it can't just sound good. The title also needs to mean something to you at least. So I suppose it's a matter of luck. I tried various other titles like We Lurk Like Thieves, which are all moments in the book. We lurk like thieves in a world better than us. That's very long. It's too long. Because nowadays, people ask you, because I live in Gurgaon, it's semi-literate, they don't read. So most of the people they never read books. They say, oh, you're a writer, and then they're always looking behind me to search for someone more interesting to talk to. And that time, that's what you do. Oh, books. So what are the name of your books? So then it's like, illicit happiness. It sounds like a long, it's like, to someone who's not interested also. So once I said my first book is called 1, the second book is called 2, and the third book is 3. So I feel that sometimes a long title kind of seems very long even to me.
So you did mention that there was a phase where you were left out by the friends, or you had that lonely part. Just talk about that. How
Yeah, I wish I didn't have to. Yeah. So a strange thing happened when I was 17 in Chennai. I had a fight with my gang. Okay, I'm sure it was some intellectual argument over something, and so you insult each other, and then you walk away and you don't talk to them. And when you're 17, you think that you have some notions that you don't need friends and you can just be with books. And then I was also at that time, I found my another classmate who was not a friend then, but then we started talking about what is the meaning of life kind of a thing. This without marijuana or anything, we didn't touch those things. So I got into that, and I got into a frame of mind where the search of truth, that there is something called truth, and that there is that secret is in Hinduism, and I should delve deep into it, and everything else is not important. So that carried on for a long time, and also from a more material level, I had a misunderstanding of envy when it's just that I feel that the reason why I didn't have many friends then was also that I had high standards for friends. Someone should have told me the trick is to have low standards for friends. You're not searching for lovers, you're just searching for friends. Someone you can have a samosa with, you don't have to. So, but I thought that if you are a friend, you can't do anything bad to the other person. You know, that itself, when I think about it, it is so funny, because sometimes when friends would behave in the way they behave with each other, I never understand whether they're friends or enemies. But then later realized even the idea of envy is not the same as hatred. But recently I wrote a column arguing that envy is something which happens only between equals. And often it is not a form of hatred, it is just something people can't help. But I took all these things very seriously. So that meant that for a crucial period of my life, I lost a lot of companionship. So there are a lot of things I don't know actually, I had to pick up. That's why this social media is a big boon for me. I just have to sit and scroll down wherever, because Facebook friends are not really friends, they say a lot of things. They don't want to give information to Aadhaar, but Facebook, they'll say everything. So it's very interesting for me. So it's like talking to so many people and listening to, and I get a lot of popular culture tips, okay, which I then research so that I kind of know something, you know.
I think we'll have to wrap with that because there are people who have to have their lunch. But then you can speak to Manu Joseph if you buy his book and stand in line for an autograph. So he'll see you outside. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Manu.
Thank you very much for that.